Welcome to Resolve IBS and IBD Naturally. I'm Courtney Cowie, a nutrition therapy and functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. If you are struggling with the symptoms of IBS or IBD and want to get to the root cause of your symptoms so you can take back your health through a whole person approach, this podcast is for you. Just a disclaimer that the information I'm presenting in this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as medical advice. You should always consult a qualified practitioner before making any changes to your health or medical regimen. That being said, let's get on with the show. So today I want to talk a little bit about the topic of heart rate variability, which brings us then into the topic of wearable technology. And, I actually have a lot of thoughts on wearable technology kind of in general, and definitely like any advancement, whether it's smartphones, computers, whatnot, right? Smart refrigerators, there could be potentially some downsides to it as the technology advances. And I think you have to kind of decide as an individual where that line is for you as far as what you're willing to allow a company or potentially even, a company in tandem with other organizations or the government to track as far as your biometrics go. We won't really be talking about that topic because it's a big one and it's not necessarily relevant for the work I do. But what I do want to talk about are the advantages of actually having that data for yourself. And again, if this is something that you can afford to invest in and you can do for yourself as a way of just getting some quantifiable feedback on how your health recovery or maintenance efforts are going, it really does make sense. And I know that for me personally, I've gotten a lot of value out of the tech that I do own. So I'm going to be focusing specifically today on the Oura Ring, which is why I'm sharing my screen. And you're probably wondering, what is this odd stuff she's got up on her screen? So I'll speak to that in just a moment. But I do want to just touch on the fact that there are a number of different really good devices out there to give you feedback on heart rate variability. In fact, in the program work I do with my clients, another huge favorite of mine, although it's not as easy to wear, on your body all the time, is the HeartMath Inner Balance. And that's something I will often include with my program work with clients, depending on what level of support they opt in to work with me at, because I teach them HeartMath. And I feel once you start to get into the HeartMath techniques and you learn those things, naturally you get very curious about the technology and you really wonder, am I doing this right? I'd love to be able to try this inner balance and see if I'm actually able to put my body in a state of coherence, which will make sense if that's the path you decide to go down, either with me or on your own in the future. But just suffice it to say that really what that inner balance technology that HeartMath created is doing is it's measuring your heart rate variability. And it's giving you feedback on that in real time, which is very valuable for practicing certain stress, emotional, and nervous system regulation techniques. The downside to the inner balance is it's really designed to be used for specific practice sessions with that technology, not necessarily as a wearable you put on your body and you just wear all day long. So for most people, then the options kind of come down to smartwatches and something like the Oura Ring. You could also argue that your smartphone has those capacities, and the health app on the Apple iPhone, or I'm sure there's equivalent on an Android, can measure some of this data too, especially if you carry your phone on you. It's able to kind of measure your step count and that type of thing. But as I mentioned earlier, I just want to speak about specifically the Oura Ring because I found it to be probably one of the most comprehensive tools out there that absolutely does measure HRV and a number of other statistics that I think really is good. It's a very good value for the spend of the money, and you're getting a well-rounded view of your health if you invest in an Oura Ring. Maybe before I get into that, I do just want to talk a bit about heart rate variability because this might be the first time some of you are actually hearing that term. depending on, just how much research you've done or what you've come across on the internet as you've been looking for holistic health answers to your health challenges. So heart rate variability is really measuring the spacing between heart rates or heartbeats, I guess. And the thing that's really interesting about it is that you might think having a very regular, steady, predictable spacing between heartbeats is a good thing, but actually, in fact, that type of super regular heart rhythm is a reflection of a more sympathetic dominant nervous system state, meaning that it's reflective of a more stressed body state. And so, interestingly, what's actually more reflective of relaxed or rest and digest or parasympathetic dominant nervous system state is more variable spacing between those heart rates or those heartbeats. And so a pattern that's not as easy to guess. So if you were going to actually look at maybe like a computer device measuring literally beat by beat, in the first case of a regular heartbeat, it would look very, very consistent. That picture would look very, very similar. In the case of the second, you're going to see these little blips kind of at different rates down the page, right? And in terms of heart rate variability, generally speaking, there's a range of optimization there. It can actually, believe it or not, go too high, but more often than not, what's happening for people, especially chronically ill people, is that it's too low. And generally, the more variability, in other words, the less predictable the spacing between heartbeats, the higher the heart rate variability. And what I mean by that is within that healthy range, that optimal range. Obviously, too high in HRV, as I just mentioned, can signal some things are off in the body as well. I know that one question I had when I was going down the rabbit hole on this topic was like, what are we aiming for with this, right? And it honestly, in doing some research, was tricky to get a real definitive range for HRV that the average person wants to aim for. But as far as what I could tell, just from consulting different sources, doing my own research on the internet, it looks like the average healthy person, and we're talking about someone who wouldn't have, chronic symptoms of any sort, would report themselves as feeling relatively healthy and feeling relatively healthy. They would probably have an HRV between 60 and 70. And of course, the other thing to consider too is that elite athletes tend to have higher heart rate variability simply because their bodies are so trained up. And generally, the greater the physical health of the body, the more that will correlate with a higher HRV too. So, based on what I read, elite athletes could have HRVs that go all the way up to even as high as 90. I personally haven't met a person who actually is even above a 60 on the regular, but I will also share with you that not everyone I work with has HRV measuring technology, and I do tend to attract people that are having chronic symptoms and health issues. So it's probably not going to be as common that out of the gate I would necessarily see that type of situation. But if you're like me and you're out there dabbling and trying to gather information and, think about things that can help improve where you're going with your health, the Oura Ring really is a good tool for that, and understanding kind of what you're aiming for with HRV is really important. Okay, so with that being said, let me just talk about 3 specific points why I like the Oura Ring. And I did kind of prelude this a bit, but I will also tell you I do have a Garmin smartwatch as well because I do work out, and I do sometimes on occasion decide to put myself through like 5K training regimens. Right now, being winter, I usually take a break from that type of thing. But it's nice if you do want to do that kind of training. Obviously, it's got all of those functions and capacities built in. But the newer editions of the Garmin smartwatches, and I'm willing to bet the Apple smartwatch is the exact same, will track HRV, and which is awesome, and I love that. The downside of having a watch do this for you is unless you're a really solid, sound sleeper that doesn't mind wearing potentially clunky things on your body, you would have to wear your watch pretty much continuously to get a pretty accurate reading. And I'll be honest with you, my Garmin watch that I have now is the smallest I've ever had. That's a really nice thing about technology. It tends to get smaller and lighter. But for me personally, I don't really love having a watch on my wrist when I'm sleeping at night. I really try to do everything I can to make my sleeping environment as optimal and comfortable as possible. Just as I'm sure you've discovered, if you struggle with any kind of sleep issue, or as you've gotten older, you've become a more restless or a lighter sleeper, you really try hard to kind of optimize that. So I don't really love to wear my Garmin outside of just the daytime hours, which means that I'm going to be lacking some of the information as far as the nighttime goes, and particularly my sleep. So the Oura is really great because it's small. It comfortably fits on a finger. I find it very easy to just put it on and forget about it, especially at night. So I can essentially get my data 24 hours a day with the Oura Ring. It does charge relatively quickly. I've had mine for just over a year, and obviously with age, it will tend to lose a charge a little bit more quickly. But that being said, I tend to take it off to check my stats once a day in the morning, and usually within about 10 to 15 minutes, it's pretty close to fully charged. So it's something you can sit on the stand. I tend to have a routine in the morning where when I'm getting ready in the bathroom, I take my Oura Ring off, I charge it, I sync it, the data with my phone, with the Oura app on my phone, and then I can kind of do the check-in and see what my scores are saying, and then get my ring charged and put it back on. So that part is great. And I also like the fact that with the Oura Ring, although I believe this has changed in the last 6 to 12 months, because I think people have actually asked for the ability to preset their fitness goals or their step counts or their activity goals. And I can totally understand that, because that's a trend with smartwatches. And in the beginning, though, when I had the Oura Ring, it didn't necessarily allow you to, say, I'm aiming for an hour of fast-paced walking a day. Like, you couldn't really put a goal like that in there. It would sort of, in a sense, measure what it was getting from you, and over time kind of suggest whether or not you need more or less movement based on the biometric feedback the ring was getting from your body. And so it wouldn't necessarily give you specifics like walk 3 miles today, but it would tell you whether or not this is a day you could go on and really burn it up and do a hard workout, or take it a little bit easier. And so within that, you'd have to sort of decide for yourself, how do I feel? Do I feel like really going and doing a hard workout today? Do I want to just maybe do some activity, keep it light? Do I want to take it easy? So it's great because the emphasis of the Oura Ring is not necessarily on athletic performance and getting faster and faster like you might think with something like a smartwatch. It's a more balanced device, and it puts, I'd say, equal emphasis on movement / activity, quality sleep, and then what they call readiness. And there's 3 different scores for that, actually. And the readiness is a compilation of your HRV, which again ties back into your stress, somewhat back into sleep quality, rest, and recovery. And, I would just say on the whole, balance, is your body optimized in terms of, are you sitting too long? Are you maybe too active on certain days? The Oura Ring is really interested in trying to guide you to become more and more balanced. And so I like that, because it tends to be a little bit more holistic than just a device that's focused on performance, as I mentioned earlier. So let's talk a bit about the stats. I do have them up here on the screen, and I will tell you right off the bat that this is definitely not how the stats look on my phone. If you get the Oura app for your Oura Ring, it presents it in a much nicer looking fashion. There's essentially, and I wish I could do this, I'm doing this at a computer today, so it's hard for me to kind of do this and show you on my phone, but maybe we can figure that out in the future. For what I know how to do with technology, I can for sure share my screen and show you what this looks like from my online account. But it's a nice, the app is really nice in how it actually presents the information. You've got essentially your sleep score, your readiness score, and your activity score. And they're usually, the sleep and the readiness score are usually stacked. And then at the bottom of the app, there's different tabs you can tab across to see different sub-metrics under each of those 3 scores. And then you can go in and see your activity score. So I'm actually showing you what my Oura Ring is showing for right now. I will mention too, when I put mine on, the other really nice thing about this device that I did forget is you can put it into airplane mode, which is really nice because when it's on your finger, then it means it's still collecting information, but it's not constantly talking to your phone and sending like an EMF Bluetooth signal back and forth. It will if you don't put it in airplane mode, but for those of you who are concerned about extra signal exposure, EMF exposure, I certainly, as a practitioner, am more concerned about those things as well. I like the fact that I can put this ring in airplane mode, and then that essentially takes away a large amount of at least that communication signaling part of it, right? And then when it's on the stand, I have to put it into the Bluetooth mode to get it to talk to the app on the phone. But that's such a short period of time that for the most part, I can wear it without any signal on, and then just keep the signal on for a short period of time when I want to check the stats. So that's something too that's, I think, important to mention. But here you're seeing actually sleep as far as it was last night, or what my Oura Ring showed me this morning. It's actually giving me, interestingly, on my online account, the lowest resting heart rate as of this morning, and then showing my total sleep from last night, and then my calorie count through activities. Your struggles with bloating, constipation, and diarrhea keeping you home on Friday, Saturday nights, clicking through Netflix because you're dealing with stomach cramping, or simply need to have a bathroom nearby? Have you stopped being active and joining your friends at the gym because it flares your symptoms and wipes you out for the rest of the day? How about avoiding social gatherings involving food because of extreme anxiety over food reactions or sudden bathroom runs in public? Or because you are too embarrassed to explain your limited diet to others? The isolation, loneliness, and depression that comes with an IBS or IBD struggle is real and often worse than the physical symptoms. I'm here to tell you that you deserve better than just living with this reality and suffering alone. From a person who has lived this nightmare and come out the other end, and who has helped many others do the same, there is hope, and you are worth the investment. Click the link below to schedule your free 15-minute gut check call. Did you find this episode informative and helpful? I'd love to have you leave me a 5-star rating. Do you have questions about holistic approaches to optimizing gut health that you'd like to ask? Please leave your question or comment below, and I will be sure to address it personally or cover it in a future episode. Be sure to check the show notes for any resources mentioned in today's episode. See you next time.